The official investigation concluded in May 1959. 9 hikers. Cause of death: a compelling natural force of unknown origin. Case closed. This is wrong, not because the investigation was incompetent. The investigators were thorough. The physical evidence was documented with care. The conclusion was wrong, because the 9 bodies found on the slope of Kholat Syakhl were not the 9 hikers who had camped there. The Dyatlov group was gone before the first search team arrived. What the searchers found was something the mountain had made to replace them. It had not finished making it. I found this file through a civil emergency registry I was systematizing for an institutional inventory of Soviet mountain rescue incidents. The Dyatlov Pass case appeared as a cross-reference flag in the database. A mountain rescue incident classified substantially above the civil emergency level, with a military authorization stamp predating the official search by 11 days. The official search began February 26, 1959. The military authorization is dated February 15th. The group was reported overdue on February 12th. The military had a 3-day head start on an incident that had not yet been officially reported. Nothing personal. A military stamp on a civilian rescue file dated before the rescue began. Stamps on wrong documents are what archivists investigate. The Dyatlov group, 9 students and graduates of the Ural Polytechnic Institute, led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, had set out in late January 1959 on a ski trek across the northern Urals, aiming for the summit of Otorten. On the night of February 1st to 2nd, something caused them to cut their way out of their tent from the inside and flee into the snow in minimal clothing. This much is established. What caused it, what happened after, what the bodies found on the slope between February and May represent, none of this is established, despite 60 years of public investigation and speculation. The program file offers a different account. Not an account of what killed them. An account of what the mountain was doing when the military arrived, and what the military found when they got there, and what was left on the slope when the mountain ran out of time. In those days, secrets were impossible to keep. Every communication was monitored. Every movement was tracked. The state saw everything. Today, you have a choice. NordVPN encrypts your internet traffic and hides your identity from anyone trying to watch what you do online. If you want to protect your privacy, check the link in the pinned comment for an exclusive deal. The military unit reached the pass on February 14, 1959. The Dyatlov group, all 9, were located in a ravine 2 kilometers northeast of the tent site, in conditions the military commander's log describes as alive, ambulatory, in severe psychological distress, unable to give coherent account of events since the night of February 1st. They were extracted under emergency protocols, transported by helicopter to a facility the log identifies only as Facility 7. Their personal effects, ski equipment, and the tent, which had already been cut open from the inside, were left in place. The slope was left as found. What was on the slope at that point was not the Dyatlov group. The geologist attached to the first official search team, the civilian team that arrived February 26th, was Dr. Vera Sorokina, 40 years old, from the Ural Geological Institute. She was embedded with the search team to assess terrain hazards. She was not there to examine bodies. She examined them anyway because what she found when the team located the first 2 bodies on February 26th did not look right to her in the specific way that things look wrong to a scientist who has spent her career measuring what natural processes do to physical matter. Her field journal from February 28, 1959, 2 days after the first discovery.
February 28th. I have been asked not to speak about what I observed during the recovery of the first 2 bodies. I am writing this for my own records. The bodies were found approximately 300 meters from the tent site, lying in the snow near the tree line. Male subjects, identified as Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko. Both were in minimal clothing. Both showed signs of severe hypothermia. What was unusual was the condition of the tissue. Hypothermia victims freeze from the extremities inward. The tissue damage should progress in a predictable pattern: fingers, toes, nose, ears, then limbs, then core. These bodies showed the opposite pattern. The core tissue was more degraded than the extremities. The internal organs showed advanced decomposition inconsistent with the ambient temperature and the estimated time of death. The hands and feet were intact. The face was intact, but when I examined the torso, the tissue felt wrong, too soft, too uniform, like something that had been frozen and thawed multiple times, but the surface showed no evidence of thaw cycles. I asked the medical examiner if he had noticed this. He told me he had not examined the bodies yet. I asked if I could be present during the autopsy. He said no. I took samples anyway, small tissue samples from the torso of both subjects. I labeled them as geological samples and stored them with my field equipment. No one questioned this. When I returned to the institute, I examined the samples under magnification. The cellular structure was wrong. The cells were too regular, too uniform in size and shape. Human tissue is not uniform. Even in death, there is variation. These cells looked like they had been grown, not developed, like something had built them from a template, cell by cell, without understanding the natural variation that occurs in living tissue. I do not know what this means. I do not know if anyone else has noticed this. I am writing this down because I need to remember what I saw, in case I am asked to forget it.
Dr. Sorokina was removed from the search team on March 2, 1959. The official reason given was that her expertise was no longer required. She was reassigned to a geological survey project in the Komi Republic, 300 kilometers west of the search area. Her field journal was not included in the official case file. The tissue samples she collected were never mentioned in any official report. They were not returned to her. The program file contains a copy of her journal, along with a laboratory analysis of the tissue samples dated March 15, 1959. The analysis was conducted at Facility 7, the same facility where the living members of the Dyatlov group had been taken. The analysis confirmed Dr. Sorokina's observations. The tissue was human in composition, but anomalous in structure. The cells were uniform in a way that suggested artificial construction rather than biological growth. The report included a single-line conclusion, typed in capital letters.
Samples do not match reference tissue from subjects extracted February 14th.
The bodies found on the slope were not the people who had been rescued. The people who had been rescued were somewhere else, and whatever was left on the mountain was still being made when the civilian search team arrived. The mountain had not finished its work, but it had run out of time. The geologist's field journal contained observations she chose not to include in her formal report. She wrote,
"I want to record my observations about the 2 recovered bodies before I decide whether to include them in my formal report, because I am not certain a formal report is the appropriate place for what I am going to write. I have been a working geologist for 18 years. I am not a pathologist. what I know about human remains, I know from field experience, from knowing what cold does to tissue, what wind does, what time does. I know the normal appearance of death in mountain conditions. The two bodies found on February 26th do not look right in a way I cannot attribute to the conditions or the duration of exposure. The surface tissue appears, I'm going to use the most accurate word I have, unfinished, not decomposed, not damaged. Unfinished, as though the process that produced the surface had been interrupted before it was complete. The skin at the extremities has a texture I do not have a word for. Not frostbitten, not necrotic. The texture of something that was becoming something and stopped partway. I am aware that this description is not scientific language. I am writing it because it is the most accurate language I have for what I observed, and accuracy is more important to me than the appearance of rigor. I am going to describe one specific detail and then stop, because the specific detail is the thing that will determine whether any of this goes into the formal report. The second body, the female, was missing the tongue. Not missing in the sense of having been removed. Missing in the sense that the structure that would have held a tongue was present, but the tongue itself had not yet formed. The oral cavity looked like a structure waiting to receive something that had not arrived.
Waiting to receive something that had not arrived. A geologist documenting the specific quality of the wrongness in language she chose for accuracy rather than credibility. The detail about the tongue did not go into the formal report. It is in the field journal, which she apparently filed with her other geological survey materials, and which ended up, by some chain of archival decisions I cannot reconstruct, in the program file. 5 more bodies were found between March and May. The pattern Sorokina observed in the first 2 was consistent across all of them, with variations that the program's biologist later characterized as reflecting different stages of the same process. 2 of the later bodies, found in a ravine in May, were missing eyes as well as tongues. 3 showed internal injuries, including fractured ribs and skull damage, with no corresponding external trauma. The official medical explanation for the internal injuries without external cause: the force of a vehicle collision, transferred through the body without surface impact. The bodies were on an open snow slope. There were no vehicles. The biologist who analyzed the recovered bodies was Dr. Pyotr Andreev, 55 years old, from the Institute of Biophysics in Moscow. He received tissue samples in March 1959, while the official investigation was still ongoing, under a classification level that placed his work entirely outside the civil investigation's chain of custody. His report, filed April 1959. The classified analysis begins with a statement that would change everything.
I have completed the analysis of tissue samples from 6 of the 9 recovered individuals, and I want to state the central finding before providing the analytical basis, because the finding is simple and the basis is complex, and the finding is what needs to be clearly understood. The tissue samples are not fully human. They are human in their basic biological organization, the cellular architecture, the biochemical profile, the gross anatomical structure. But they are human in the way that a building under construction is a building. The framework is there. The organization is correct. The intention is clear, but the process that produces the finished thing has not been completed. The cells show normal differentiation at the macro scale and incomplete differentiation at the micro scale. They are doing what human cells do, but they have not been doing it long enough. My estimate of the biological age of the tissue, independent of any external indicators of age, is between 8 and 14 days. Not the age of the individuals these remains are identified as, which ranges from 20 to 38 years. The tissue is 8 to 14 days old. Whatever produced these remains began producing them approximately 8 to 14 days before the samples were taken, which places the beginning of the process at approximately the 1st or 2nd of February, 1959.
The 1st or 2nd of February, the night the tent was cut open from the inside. The mountain began making them the night the Dyatlov group left. Here's the first contradiction. The official medical examiner's report, filed by the Sverdlovsk regional pathologist in spring 1959, identifies all 9 recovered individuals by name, matches them to the 9 missing hikers, lists causes of death consistent with the terrain and conditions, and notes the unusual injuries, the missing soft tissue, the internal trauma, as anomalous but not inexplicable within the framework of the investigation. The report is the document that closed the case. In the program file, attached to the official report, is a classified addendum filed on the same date by a different examiner. Not the regional pathologist, but a specialist the addendum identifies only by institute number. The addendum states that tissue samples from 4 of the 9 bodies show cellular differentiation patterns inconsistent with the ages and physical histories of the individuals identified. The samples could not have come from people who had been alive for 20 to 30 years. They could have come from tissue that had been growing for approximately 2 weeks. The addendum recommends further analysis. The further analysis is not in the file. The addendum is there. The recommendation was made. Nothing in the accessible record indicates it was acted upon. 2 pathological assessments of the same 9 bodies. One confirms identification and cause of death. The other states the tissue cannot belong to the identified individuals. Both are signed, dated, filed in the same case. Neither resolves the other. Here's the second contradiction. The discovery report filed by the official search team on February 26, 1959, describes the positions of the first 2 bodies as consistent with an attempt to return to the tent, moving uphill against the slope, dying in the direction of shelter. This is the account that became the standard narrative. The hikers fled the tent, failed to make it back, died of hypothermia. In the program file is an internal report filed by the military unit that had been observing the slope since February 14th. Their observation log for February 26th records the positions of the 2 bodies as consistent with emergence rather than descent. The bodies were positioned as though they had come up through the snow rather than fallen across it, face upward, arms at sides, in postures that the military observer describes as
not the position of someone who fell, the position of something that arrived.
A military observer using the same careful language of someone trying to be accurate about something they do not have a category for. The official search team saw bodies that had tried to go up and failed. The military observers, watching the same slope for 12 days, saw bodies that had come up from below. Here is the third contradiction, the document that should not exist. The official case closure document, dated May 28, 1959. Records: 9 deceased. Cause of death established. Investigation concluded. File transferred to archive. 9 names. 9 causes. Case closed. In the program file, on the same date, is an entry in the military operations log for Facility 7.
9 subjects in stable condition. Debriefing in second phase. Psychological evaluation ongoing. Facility access restricted.
The entry is initialed by the same military commander whose authorization stamp predates the official search by 11 days. 2 documents dated May 28, 1959. One says 9 people died on a mountain in the Urals. The other says 9 people are alive in a classified facility, being debriefed. The phone call that connects these 2 documents is in the program file, recorded as standard procedure for classified facility communications. February 16, 1959, the day after the group was extracted. The military commander reporting to Moscow.
All 9 are secured. Health status is they're functional, physically functional. Psychologically, it's going to take time. They don't have clear recall of the sequence after the second. The slope. What's on the slope? The mountain left something. It's working on something. I've had my people observe it for 36 hours, and the best description I have is that it's building. It's building from the inside out. How close to finished? Close. Another 48 hours, and I don't think you'd be able to tell. Not at distance. Maybe not at all. Can you stop it? We've tried cold. Extreme cold doesn't affect the rate. We've tried interrupting it physically. It restarts. The process restarts. When the search teams come in, will they know? Not if they don't look too closely. Not at first. The issue is the soft tissue. It doesn't. Certain structures haven't formed yet. The tongue. The eyes in 2 of the cases. The internal structures in 3. It ran out of time on the details. Let the search proceed. Let them find what they find. File it as natural causes. And the 9? The 9 are at Facility 7 until we understand what the mountain was trying to do. Then we'll decide. Understood. One more thing for the record. The mountain. It used their faces. Whatever it was building with their faces. It looked like them. It looked exactly like them, except for the parts it hadn't gotten to yet. File it as natural causes. That's an order.
It looked exactly like them, except for the parts it hadn't gotten to yet. The mountain had tried to make copies. The mountain had tried to replace them. And it had almost succeeded. The official investigation found 9 bodies on a mountain. The military found 9 people alive, and 9 things that looked like them, still forming in the snow. The question the program file asks is not what happened on the mountain. The question is, what was the mountain trying to send back? And why did it need their faces to do it? The program file contains one final document, a psychological evaluation report from Facility 7, dated June 1959. The 9 subjects had been in custody for 4 months. The report notes that all 9 subjects exhibited the same recurring dream, the same nightmare every night for 4 months. They dreamed they were still on the mountain. They dreamed they were watching themselves walk away. They dreamed they were the ones left behind. They dreamed they were the copies, and they dreamed they were still forming. The psychological evaluator's final note reads,
Subjects cannot be convinced they are the originals. Subjects insist they are incomplete. Subjects request to be returned to the mountain to finish the process. Recommendation: indefinite containment. They believe they are still on the slope. They believe they never left.
The mountain had been copying since the night of February 1st. It had copied faces, bodies, clothing. It had gotten the structure right. It had not gotten the interior right, the soft tissue details, the eyes, the tongue, the precise internal architecture of a human body that had spent 20 to 30 years becoming itself. 8 to 14 days was not enough to finish what it had started. The search teams arrived while it was still working. They found what was there, classified it as the 9 missing hikers, and closed the case. The civil emergency registry that led me to this file contains a supplementary entry added in 1990 during the first wave of Soviet-era declassification. A records clerk, processing the Dyatlov case materials for partial release, noted a discrepancy. The dental records of the 9 identified victims, as filed in the official case, do not match the dental records on file for the 9 missing hikers in their medical histories at the Ural Polytechnic Institute. The clerk flagged the entry for review. The review was assigned. The assignment was never completed. The flag is still open in the registry. It has been open for 34 years. The dental comparison chart is in the program file. 9 columns, 9 hikers, 9 sets of identified remains. The chart shows the comparison side by side, the dental records from the hikers' medical histories and the dental records from the post-mortem examination. In every column, the records differ, not slightly, systematically. The post-mortem dentition is, in the language of the comparison, within normal parameters for the age and sex of each identified individual, but does not match the specific configurations documented during the hikers' lifetimes. In the margin of the comparison chart in handwriting, I cannot attribute to any named person in the file 3 lines. Not the same people, not the same teeth, not people at all. Whoever wrote that had access to both sets of records. Whoever wrote that understood what the difference meant. They filed the chart in the program folder and wrote 3 lines in the margin and did not sign their name. I am going to close this file. I am going to note the cross-reference in the Civil Emergency Registry as reviewed and the open flag as I am going to leave the flag open. It has been open for 34 years. Closing it would require marking the discrepancy as resolved. The discrepancy is not resolved. The dental records do not match. The tissue was 8 to 14 days old. The mountain was building something with the faces of 9 people who were, at the time, alive in a classified facility in an unknown location, being debriefed about something they could not clearly remember. The 9 subjects at Facility 7. Their status in the last accessible log entry, dated December 1959. Debriefing concluded. Transfer to civilian life authorized. Identities to be confirmed prior to transfer. Identities to be confirmed, as though, after 10 months of debriefing, it was still necessary to establish who they were, as though that question had not been straightforwardly answerable. I do not know if the 9 people who left Facility 7 in late 1959 were the 9 people the military extracted from the ravine below Kholat Syakhl in February. I do not know what 10 months in a classified facility, after whatever happened on the mountain on the night of February 1st, does to the question of who a person is. I know the mountain was copying them. I know it ran out of time on the details. I know the flag in the registry is still open. I am going to close the folder. I am not going to close the flag.